And it's a great pleasure for me to introduce you Mrs. Julia Heuer. Julia Heuer is Head of Regulatory Affairs at the Medical Health Services of TÜV Süd Product Service. Julia Heuer has really a extensive work experience in the medical device sector, equally in industry as well in the notified body towards the European and international medical device registration and marketing authorization, auditing, technical documentation assessment, and so on. We are really grateful, Mrs. Heuer, that you can join today and that you will now present the aspects of the European and German regulatory framework for medical devices from a notified body's perspective. And Mrs. Heuer, we are now happy to listen to your speech.
Thank you very much for your kind introduction, and thank you very much that I can participate today in this very interesting academy session. And I think I already learned a lot, and I already experienced what kind of pressure is on the, let's say, startups or new developers out there. So I try to go into a little bit into deep, maybe to support where I can with giving a clear like lessons learned from the first MDR and IVDR experiences with the first certifications we had. And so I hope I help clarifying some kind of information. Previously I had, or we had a little bit of an exchange with Dr. Ziegenberg from BV Med. She will go more into the overview of how many notified bodies and so on. So I will skip that. I will go more into technical details if this is okay for you. And I'm happy if I try to manage to be as fast as possible, and so we can have at the end also some questions. If not, then I'm also there for the panel discussion, and I hope you see my screen well and hear me well, so I can start. Yeah, I could start, yes. So that's me. I think you know me by now. I will give you the short overview about the experience of our first conformity assessments, what I mentioned, what our expectations are, or let's say it's not our expectations, it's the expectation out of the MDR, what we have to assess. Since we are a notified body, we are just like the executor of something which has been written, and we are also getting challenged by our designating authorities and also by EU if we are conducting our assessments towards what MDR actually was trying to bring into the market. We will check what missing guidances are still under development or at least announced. What does it mean for us currently? And I will give you a little bit of a take-home message. To wrap up the presentation. So generally, the very planned workflow is always manufacturer, so legal manufacturer, he's the applicant, handing in his application. Then there is some kind of internal notified body work to do, meaning a really proper review of the application. And that is one of the major and very, very intensive work in the notified body to really plan the entire conformity assessment procedure. So that is very one of the biggest steps, which then are followed by technical documentation. So you can see the sequence in the MDR or IVDR. Technical documentation, experience, everything what we have then learned towards your product shall then go into the audit setup and audit planning. Usually when it comes to the audits, it's for the initial audits, it's a two-step approach. First, more or less a document review and check if there is readiness with the manufacturer to go there on site for the step 2. In some cases, if we don't know you, we need to go also on site with the first step. Then there is, of course, like you may have experienced kind of clarification rounds. So there might be findings, there might be open questions and so on. There, it is an iterative process. And at the end of the day, if all is well, there's the certificate. So let's go a little bit into deeper for the application. So what I wanted to highlight here is what we experienced as the common pitfalls, more or less, or let's say the questions where we spend the most time. It is, first of all, is it actually a medical device? So that is very important, that the manufacturer really has a clear picture of his device and what's the definition of that product. Is it a system? Is it an accessory? Or what is it actually? Because that triggers then the classification and the respective conformity assessment path, which is possible. And very, very important is also what is the intended purpose of your device. And in contrary, not in contrary, but also there is that word indication. That is a little bit, that is a different terminology by intention, because the intended purpose will give you a broader spectrum of the device for which it can be used. The indication is then for which population, under which circumstances, and so on. And that we will come later into that discussion when I will give you some insights about our experiences with the basic UDI-DI. It is also very important for you as manufacturer to have a clear definition of the basic UDI-DI. You should be aware what kind of codes shall be allocated to these products, because all of that will then go into the planning of our conformity assessment procedure. Of course, it is needed that there's a product description so we can make ourselves a little bit a clearer picture of your devices. And then, of course, it is important to understand what kind of facilities, subcontractors and suppliers are involved in the design, development and production of your device. That means also there we have to assess if we need to go there or if this is part of your internal quality management and control. So that is what I just meant. Very important at the very beginning to make that plan feasible, to have at the end of the day a certificate and where we need to go and where we need to audit and what we have to assess while we are on site. And I mentioned that already, basic UDI-DI, what is that again? So I know there is a lot of confusion. What is UDI? What is basic UDI? Why is it called the same way? I cannot answer this question, but I can answer what is meant by basic UDI-DI. So basically, a basic UDI-DI is nothing which is labeled. It is not labeled or not written on a device, on the packaging or whatsoever. It is a let's say a identifier for manufacturer unique devices. So that means the basic UDI-DI is characterized by the same intended purpose. Intended purpose, I say it clearly. So as I mentioned before, intended purpose solely, the same risk class, I mean, that is clear, the same essential design and the same manufacturing characteristics. So basically, when we are looking into that situation, we have experienced with the incoming applications or while we were conducting TD assessments that the same intended purpose is actually quite clear to most of the manufacturer. And okay, then same risk class, it's also quite clear. And then it comes to the point with same essential design and same manufacturing characteristics. There was a huge interpretation variation, so it was very hard for us to really understand what's the gap of understanding, what is our understanding and what is the intention by EU and what does the manufacturer understand. So we tried to pull together these information and tried also to reach MDCG, but as you can imagine, they have a lot of topics to solve, and that was obviously not one of the priority topics. So at least I give you an interpretation from our side, how we handle it currently. So it might help you to allocate the correct basic UDI demarcations when it comes to your application. So When it comes to the same manufacturing characteristics, what we found helpful was to utilize the implementation regulation. There are already MDT codes and MDS codes defined. So basically, they are more or less representing the manufacturing characteristics in a certain way. Of course, not all of them, but it gives an overview about is it from metal, the device, is it plastics, is it an electronic system, is it in sterile condition or not, and all of these characteristics are at the end of the day also going into the definition of same manufacturing characteristics. Of course, if you add on sterilization at the end, that is a different concept. So for this topic, we actually thought this is a good approach, and it worked out so far. When it comes to the essential design, that is a little bit more blurry. What does it exactly mean? Is it the same essential design, like elements? Is it the same essential main construction characteristics, same principles of design, and so on? So still there needs to be an alignment. Anyhow, a recommendation could be don't be too broad, but also don't be too strict. So I will, because I will show you how it ends up if you are going two extreme ways. So the first experience was devices with complete different raw materials and design features were covered under one basic UDI/IDI. This has an effect basically on the TD assessment within the notified body, because that means based on the Annex 9 of the MDR, the notified body has to assess all variants under the basic UDI/IDI. So if you can imagine the workflow in the notified body, it's also like production. You get a technical documentation, you have to plan who is conducting the assessment and how approximately how much time is he needing for this and that device, and you don't go into super deep in the very beginning, because then you did the actual assessment already. So you plan a certain kind of time, and then you see in the middle of the process, you see, there is actually more than there are more devices covered which have very extreme differences in one TD, which actually at the end of the day forces the notified body to split that TD and separate that into like 4 TD assessments, which is then first of all for every participant, also for the manufacturer, of course, a little bit of an upset situation, because that takes longer, and it will never be finished at the end. So there are rounds and rounds, and it takes ages. So that was one sample we experienced. What has been done then, the manufacturer went back, had scrutinized the basic UDI/IDI setup, and split it into reasonably work packages. For the other extreme, one other manufacturer decided that every single article of a sample class 2B device gets its own basic UDI/IDI, even if these characteristics, these 4 which build a basic UDI/IDI, have been the same. So what does it mean for you as a manufacturer? It means that you have more devices to be sampled during the certification cycle. Maybe that does not kick in super hard in the first certification cycle, but if you go into the MDCG guidance document 2019-13, you will see that there is a certain kind of percentage ramping up with the second certification cycle. That means actually the notified body would be forced, depending on the number of basic UDI/IDIs, to sample them in either 5% value or with 15% value. And that can be, the more basic UDI/IDIs you have, the bigger is the sampling, which is actually not necessary. And this is two of the extremes we have figured, and still we are sure that there is more discussion coming up on the basic UDI systematic, but I would really emphasize you to scrutinize your implementation of the basic UDI to avoid any kind of conflicts later on when you try to getting certified. Technical documentation. So what are our experiences? Basically, the technical documentation, we know it is a very like a big folder. A lot of documents are in. A lot of documents have like similar or consistent information, and US manufacturer, it is very good if you really take care that these information throughout the documents are consistent, meaning you have first claimed your intended purpose, your indications, your contraindications, risk-benefit ratio, and then you claim certain benefits out of that product. And if these information are not consistent throughout, like the IFU, the clinical evaluation, the risk assessment, and your like homepage information, then we are coming into the circle where all these references are not consistent anymore, and that is one of the major deficiency reasons, that there is inconsistency found within the technical documentation. What we also found was that we had challenges when the TD structure was not covering all of the aspects from Annex 2 and Annex 3 requirements. I'm not talking about the layout or the numbering of the chapters. I'm talking about that really missing pieces of the requirements were there. So we had to, have a second round for asking new documents, for example, like the promotional material, the manufacturing and process data were missing. And when it comes to the content, we know, of course, there was always a TD for the MDD, and it was previously called the essential requirements, but now we have actually the GSPR, so meaning you should take care that there are really correct wording is used, and then also the general safety and performance requirements are utilized instead of the old essential requirements. Then of course, the scope of the documents, we have, for example, the clinical evaluation report. It is actually from itself a standalone document that is very important. Sometimes we are missing the verification and validation methods information. Then we are missing like the documented evidences, like the reports. Information on the design stages which have been applied were missed in the documentation. Information on preclinical testing, I think that goes along with the verification and validation at some point. And the post-market activities are not clearly planned or provided. That is really one of these strong MDR focuses on the clinical and the post-market activities, which are very, very sort of strict regulated, and these are very important for a notified body to assess and therefore for the manufacturer to hand in. When it comes to an audit, then I was also asked by Dr. Hemsmeyer to maybe give an overview about our remote auditing situation with the MDR and IVDR. And the most challenging point is why there are not more certificates out there yet is because of the pandemic situation and the legal requirements. So if you look into the Annex 9 of MDR and IVDR, there are sections. Let's stay with the initial certification. There are the section 2.3. It has a very tiny sentence in there. The assessment procedure shall include an audit on the manufacturer's premises and, if appropriate, on the premises of the manufacturer's suppliers. That actually means that the notified body is forced by all means to go there on site. That sentence is actually the legal basis why the notified bodies, as their hands are tied more or less to conducting remote audits. It is legally not allowed. That has not been softened. It has been then, after a lot of discussion, more or less softened into the situation, into the or with the notice from the Commission, which I cited here. that there was a commitment due to the pandemic situation for the devices which are necessary either to fight the pandemic or support the healthcare system, and but so that you have an insight what is going on. We just cannot say, okay, you have an application for MDR, we do an audit, that's fine. We have to really send for each individual case where we decide this product is necessary, like ventilators or any kind of that devices for fighting the pandemic. We have to make a critical case-by-case assessment, risk analysis. We have to explain why we are not going to that area of concern, or why are we not traveling, why there's an obstacle to do a safe audit, and so on and so on. And we have to make sure that the compliance and risk profile of the manufacturer is documented, so that we have a sort of an evidence that we think it is worth to give him a certification based on a remote audit. So that is a little bit the explanation why the notified bodies would actually understand that there is potential in remote auditing, but due to also legal implications, they can just not do it in all of the cases. Typical findings, I summarized them here. The person responsible for regulatory compliance is not defined. You know that Article 15 out of the MDR, there is, or there was, like in the past, no proper project plan for the transition to MDR. I highlight here, for example, the management review, the interfaces to the single registration number in UDAMED is not implemented. Okay, UDAMED is a little bit was not possible so far, but they are setting up the modules more and more, and there's that MDCG guidance out there which gives some alternatives. I added a question mark because also these alternatives are not yet set up properly, but it's going on step by step. Incident reporting is not sufficiently implemented, and not towards the articles of the MDR, which are also superseding the previous MDD stipulations. So that is one of the crucial system criteria for the MDR, that there is also a very good post-market surveillance and incident reporting. MDR knowledge is missing as from the training level. The UDI system integration is missing. It's not only a basic UDI, but it is also then really to the UDI characters which shall be labeled, or when they shall be labeled. There's also a sequence of timelines, as you may remember, and there is sometimes no awareness that the manufacturer has to really check if there are common specifications out, and also MDCG guidance documents. So I know it is a little bit a sad situation that you need for an MDR, which has by itself also hundreds of pages. Then you need like 60 MDCG guidances, but yeah, what can I say? We have to fight that game as well, and I think there's no way around. We need to take them into consideration. So you should be very well aware if there is a new guidance published, and what does it mean for you. Of course, then there are clarifications, and some of the questions I have highlighted here. Why is my notified body asking that? He never asked that before. I'm certified for 20 years. Yes, that is appreciated. Anyhow, that MDR, IVDR is a very brand new regulation, and there are brand new questions. So even if something was okay before, it might not be okay now. The information is not available with me. Please contact our supplier. He's doing everything. That is, of course, also not a proper situation for you as manufacturer. You as legal manufacturer, you are really legally responsible for your product, and also then for all the information from your supplier to make sure that you have a safe device. So the notified body is not going to any kind of subcontractor or supplier. First, he's going to you and ask you for the information, and he will make then audit the supplier if that is working as intended, but he is not individually contacting suppliers. When it comes, for example, to TD assessment, this is too much information to share. We cannot provide gigabytes of data. Unfortunately, yes, you have. That's the situation. For the TD assessment, it has been made pretty clear in the Annex 2 and Annex 3, which shall be part of the TD. And if this is more gigabytes, it's more gigabytes. Can the notified body ask this? So basically, a notified body shall and needs and must require any information or data from the manufacturer which is necessary in order to properly conduct the chosen conformity assessment procedure. So basically that is written in the Article 53 of the MDR, and this is if you need to plan a conformity assessment, you need to know what the manufacturer's profile is and what the manufacturer's product is about. And so otherwise it would not be possible to carry out the activities we are obliged to. What about the guidance documents? So basically, as you have been experienced, the appropriate surveillance activities is there's a missing guidance. That is very unfortunate, and that goes along with actually the post-market surveillance requirements, since obviously on EU level there has been a discussion coming up if the PSOR is actually applicable to legacy devices. So now there is one working group and another working group of on EU level which are dealing with this issue, and so this holds up the entire MDCG guidance on the appropriate surveillance. So I can only recommend to everyone keep a close eye on the news, what is considered by then MDCG for appropriate surveillance activities, and that gives you then a picture of what the notified body who issued your MDD certificate or AIMDD certificate is really needing to assess, and how to continue the surveillance activities until 2024 or earlier if your certificate is running out earlier. There is missing guidance on classification. For the vigilance, there is not everything clarified. Harmonized reporting is not clarified. Also for notified bodies, for example, the authorized representatives. There's a situation, of course, you may know the situation with Switzerland, and as an example, the legal status of app providers is still not very clear. What has been done, I think until May, there were thousands of certificates under MDD to be issued, and there was a big wave actually. Previously in May, our certification body had a lot to do, and the validity is limited until May 2024. And you can, I think Dr. Ziegenberg will show you that curve. So if you can imagine, or as you can imagine, a lot of manufacturers handed in their renewal application for the MDD certificate just prior May 2021. That means now there is sort of the market is set up with MDD certificates, but then the curve is getting onto the top and in 2024, and I can only encourage everyone to really start MDR certification projects and really hand in applications, even if a notified body cannot go on site, but he can start doing TD assessments. So that is really something which I would like to encourage you. Plan carefully and ahead of time. Do it step by step. Maybe don't choose to shift your entire scope into one session, because that holds up the entire process. Do it step by step. That might be more sufficient than at the end of the day pile it up and get stressed out in 2024. And still the resource situation remains critical. Even from EU level, they say there are enough and sufficient we will see. And the digitalization is very necessary. So some of the manufacturers still very paper-based. As you see in this remote situation, it is hard to keep up, and please keep also up then in the communication with your notified body, and to plan your conformity assessment procedure. Even if you are not yet ready, give him an information when you think you are ready, so he can plan you in, and everybody is then well aware of the plans when you're planning to go into the market with an MDR certificate, so they can plan properly with you. So thank you very much. I hope the time, I kept the time more or less.
You did.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mrs. Hoyer, for your really excellent presentation and your detailed experiences that you shared with us with regard to the implementation of the MDR from the notified bodies perspective. You kindly arranged and prepared for the panel discussion, so I'm sure we have a lot of questions and aspects to discuss with you.